Hard at work back there. We continue to bring words as weapons into the open tonight. One of them so offensive to some people, I won't say it on the air. Call it the other F word, a 6-letter derogatory term for homosexual. The latest controversy involved Grey's Anatomy star Isaiah Washington, accused of using the word to refer to his gay co-star, T.R. Knight.
No, I did not call TR a faggot. It never happened.
But he later admitted he in fact had used the word, and he checked himself in for counseling. So does the new F word pack so much hate it too ought to be banished? Joe Solmonese has been talking about it on his XM radio show. He also happens to be president of the Human Rights Campaign to End Discrimination Against Gays. Thanks so much for joining us. Joe, do you really think that the gays find the F word as offensive as blacks find the N word?
There's no question that it is just as offensive to members of the gay and lesbian community as the N-word is. But I agree with your guest who you had on earlier, Paula, who said that it's not about banning the language. It's about getting to what motivates the language in the first place.
But there are a lot of derogatory terms that are used quite openly towards gays. I hesitate to use them. You hear them every day. Homos, queers, queens. What is it about the F word that is so vile?
The F word, for whatever reason, has become, I think, the hate-laced word that people use on the playground, on the plant floor, when they're really just, they're using the word almost like a weapon to spew an invective that is just so damaging to an individual's self-esteem and self-worth, and for whatever reason it seems to have become a much more mean-spirited term than any other.
And I guess I'm having trouble understanding that. Is it, you think the intent is different than the intent behind those other words that gays have been subjected to on the playgrounds? When I was reading an astonishing statistic that, some 75% of gays say they have heard these derogatory terms tossed around.
You know, I think the word is less important than the motivation behind it. And again, I think the work for us to do is much more about that motivation, getting to the core of what it is that motivates people to use words as weapons. And what I think is interesting about what happened and why it is that we're talking about the F word is that it started in the workplace, someplace where, probably T.R. Knight and Isaiah Washington wouldn't have otherwise chosen to be together except for the fact that they had to be because they were at work. And Isaiah Washington has chosen to work in schools to try and combat this. Another location where Americans come together every day, not necessarily by design. And so I think we've got to go to those places where American people congregate on a daily basis and get to the core of what it is that motivates this language, regardless of what the word choice might be.
Joe Solmonese, thank you for your time. We got to go another place right now, and that is back to our Out in the Open panel, Lauren Lake, Keith Boykin, and Steve Malsberg. Keith, you are gay. You are very happy to share that with our audience. How often have you heard the F word?
Well, I don't actually hear it very often myself because, being black, first of all, it kind of makes a difference for me because I think the whole Isaiah Washington issue is as much about race as it is about sexuality. There are a lot of black gay people I know who have spoken to who don't feel that he should be fired, but who are very troubled by the whole remark that he made. And I think people want to focus on doing something constructive out of this, but don't necessarily want to have someone lose his job because of it.
Clearly, so many gays were offended by this, and they see it more as an anti-homosexual issue than an anti-black slur.
No, you're right. It's not that what he said was an anti-black slur. It's that the reaction to it, some people see as being anti-black, targeting a black person, because this is a person, Isaiah Washington, who I've seen over the course of the past 10 years or so. The first time I heard about him was in the movie he did called Get on the Bus with Spike Lee, where he played an openly gay character. And I've seen him grow and I've seen him evolve. I've seen him where he wrote an article in Essence magazine 10 years ago where he condemned homophobia. So the Isaiah Washington who was criticizing T.R. Knight, I don't know who that person is, and I'm glad that he's checked himself into counseling. I'm glad that he's met with groups who are talking about this, but that's not the Isaiah Washington I've known.
Joe was just saying that the word is less important than the motivation behind it. If that is true, why is it that some gays have so much comfort using the word towards each other and it's off limits to the straight community?
That's exactly my point, and that gets back to the black issue as well. I call it kind of the soul food syndrome, where black people are known for making something out of nothing. We had the scraps of everything on the plantation, so we made chitlins a dish, and now everybody wants to eat them, white people too. But we don't want to make the N-word into chitlins. We don't want everybody saying it. And for gay people as well, I've heard gay friends of mine talk about, oh, what a queen, or such and such. But you don't want the other person to say it. And I think that's where it gets problematic, is because it's getting too complicated for people to understand who can say it and who can't. I mean, you know, for black people, Spanish people maybe can say the N-word. They're brown. But Indian people can't say it. They're brown too. And white people can't say it. It's too complicated.
Is this political correctness?
Yeah, we have a double standard. We have a terrible double standard. You know why Washington was forced to go to rehab for this and Rosie wasn't, for her anti-Asian remarks? And why Rosie was able to say, you could tell a gay guy because he wants to toss the salad, or on The View she agreed with when they said gay guys don't keep things in their front pockets because they like to look neat in the front. She went along with that because Rosie's gay. There's gay pressure groups in this country. ABC brags in their latest stockholder brochure that they have a 100% rating from the Human Rights Campaign. That's what it's all about. So they send this guy Washington with the threat of his job to rehab because he said the F word, despite the fact that he's defended gays in the past. It doesn't matter. It's all political correct nonsense.
It's all about keeping that show on the air. It's about keeping the show on the air, and keeping the viewership up. Let's be honest. This isn't so much about the F word.
Wait, this is a top-rated show. You mean if he doesn't go to rehab, nobody's going to watch?
Well, no, the problem is people are going to keep coming up against it, and they don't want that.
Well, and it's not just a question of political correctness. It's a question of what's right and what's wrong and who the speaker is. It does make a difference. If I use the N-word or if you use the N-word, there's a real big difference in the way black people will interpret that. And
Rosie
you're really
offended Asians, and she works for ABC. He offended gays.
No, but will you give me that point, though, right?
Rosie did offer an apology.
And she said, and I may do it again.
What she did say that,
but she didn't say she would do it purposefully. She said
exactly.
she made a mistake
Washington said I might do it again.
I think that is the important point. What we talked about, it's about educating people. I'm going to be very honest. I never knew until this whole fallout. I don't go around using the F word, but I didn't personally know that it was that offensive. I watched Rosie do that Asian joke. I never thought to myself, how many times on the schoolyard or when you're in a kid in the school bus and people are imitating different nationalities, that would be how they did an Asian interpretation.
So you weren't offended by it?
It went over my head, and here I am.
How about
I'm pretty
kids
much
who are
clued
picked on and abused, and kids with glasses, and kids who can't run, and Jews and Hispanics? Why are we talking about N and F words?
You get the closing thought.
But Steve, what you can't forget is that gay people are not only suffering, but young gay people are committing suicide at greater rates than any other population.
And that's the fault of the public saying the F word?
When young gay kids are being forced to hear words like that, it has an impact.
So we have to get in the minds of people. We have to get in people's minds. We can't legislate it.
All right, we've got a lot more to cover with you tonight. Please stay with us. We move next.